Once the investor pays his operating expenses, he'll know how many net dollars his building brings in. 109,200 to 8,640 equals $100,560 net dollars. Now the last step, divide the net dollars, $100,560, by the rate of return that Bill wants this money to represent, 11%. $100,560 divided by 11% equals $914,181.81. If he pays more than that, he will not make 11% on his investment. According to USPAP, the definition of market value is: the highest price a property will bring incorrect. The most probable price a property will bring correct. The lowest price a property will bring. USPAP does not define price. What is the most probable price a property will bring? Question rationale. USPAP defines market value as the most probable price a property will bring in terms of money and under open market conditions, without any undue stimulus. The price a property would bring if freely offered on the open market is called market price incorrect. Replacement value. Fair market value correct. Insurance value. What is fair market value? Question rationale. The price a property would bring, if freely offered on the open market, is its fair market value. 3. Prepayment practice and disclosures. Which of the following is a non-dischargeable debt according to the Bankruptcy Code? Child support, student loans, unpaid taxes. All of the other options are correct. What is all of the other options are correct? A dischargeable debt is an amount owed to a creditor that can be terminated or wiped out in a bankruptcy proceeding. Some debts are non-dischargeable, for example, taxes, alimony or spousal maintenance, child support, debts incurred due to drunk driving violations, student loans, etc. If a debt is non-dischargeable, collection activity may resume after the Chapter 13 case is completed. Salesperson Andrews receives an offer to purchase, which is accompanied by a $2,000 earnest money deposit in the form of a personal note. Which is true in this case? The resulting contract will be voidable at the seller's option. The offer should indicate that the deposit is in the form of a note. Andrews has breached his agent's duty to the seller. Andrews should return the note and ask the purchaser to give him a check for the same amount. What is the offer should indicate that the deposit is in the form of a note. Although cash, in the form of a check, is the more accepted form of earnest money, a personal note or any other valuable consideration acceptable to the owner is allowable. Which of the following state agencies would receive complaints concerning fair housing laws? Department of Fair Employment and Housing, Department of Real Estate, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Department of Community Development. What is Department of Fair Employment and Housing? Department of Fair Employment Housing is set up to receive discrimination complaints. Adrian, a licensed principal real estate broker, was sued for conversion. This means Adrian allegedly did which of the following? Failed to maintain a positive balance in his client's trust account. Misappropriated his client's funds. Failed to reconcile his client's trust account in a timely manner. Commingled the client's trust account funds with his own. What is misappropriated his client's funds? Misappropriation is the intentional, illegal use of the property or funds of another person for one's own use or other unauthorized purpose. This is different than commingling, which is the mixing of client funds with broker funds. Normally, a structure used primarily as a warehouse would be rented by the square foot, the front foot, the square yard, the cubic foot. What is the square foot? Warehouses are usually rented per square foot. Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, also known as the Federal Fair Housing Act, prohibit discrimination in which of the following? The sales and lending of residential properties. The sales and leasing and lending of commercial and industrial properties. The leasing of commercial and industrial properties. The sales and leasing and lending of residential properties. Correct. What is the sales and leasing and lending of residential properties? The Civil Rights Act of 1968 defines housing discrimination as the refusal to sell or rent a dwelling to any person because of his race, color, religion, or national origin. Title 8 of this act is commonly referred to as the Fair Housing Act of 1968. Note: gender, familial status, and disability were added to the list of identities protected by the Fair Housing Act through amendments in 1974 and 1988. If a contract for sale provides that the owner is selling his home in an as-is condition, then hidden and latent defects must still be disclosed to the purchaser. Caveat emptor applies. The broker must assist the buyer in making a thorough inspection. The owner is generally immune from liability. What is hidden and latent defects must still be disclosed to the purchaser. Transfer disclosure statement is required of the seller even if sold as is for sale of a 4-unit residential building. If the TDS is amended, the buyer has 3 days to rescind out of the contract. If the TDS is defective, the buyer has 2 years to sue the seller. The seller should reveal all known defects but not repairs that are up to building code on the transfer disclosure statement. The licensee can never complete the seller's portion of the TDS. Larry, an unlicensed employee of a real estate broker, hands out door hangers, flyers, and makes telephone solicitations, seeking buyers and sellers. Under the real estate law, his activities are unlawful for both Larry and the employing broker, unlawful for the broker, commonly accepted behavior, unethical for Larry. What is unlawful for both Larry and the employing broker? Unlicensed assistants are not allowed to solicit buyers or sellers. Any activity by an unlicensed assistant in this regard would be a violation of California real estate law by both the unlicensed assistant and the broker. A broker must examine and approve any advertisement generated by an unlicensed assistant before publication. A broker must supervise any responses to inquiries even on the Internet. Which activity requires a real estate license? A resident manager who collects rent on behalf of a building owner, a service that, for a fee, matches individuals who want to buy and sell properties, an executor selling a decedent's building, and MLS providing listing information to members. What is a service that, for a fee, matches individuals who want to buy and sell properties? Real estate licenses, authorizations issued by state governments, give agents and brokers the legal ability to represent a home seller or buyer in the process of buying or selling real estate. A tenant's right to use a premises they have leased is called an ownership right. Adverse possession. Leasehold estate. Right of lessee. What is leasehold estate? A leasehold estate is an ownership of a temporary right to hold land or property. The lessee, or tenant, holds rights to real property by some form of title from a lessor or landlord. Although a tenant does hold rights to real property, a leasehold estate is typically considered personal property. RESPA provides for specific legal penalties concerning all of the following activities, except kickbacks, unearned fees, a seller requiring a specific title insurer, a buyer acquiring a specific loan provider. What is a buyer acquiring a specific loan provider? Buyers are allowed to go through specific loan providers because they are the ones who are the clients of the lender. The balance sheet for a real estate office would show the balance that should be in the firm's business checking account after the monthly bank statement reconciliation. The firm's assets, liabilities, and net worth. The balance the firm will retain after paying commissions or transactions currently in escrow. Net earnings for the firm for the year after taxes. What is the firm's assets, liabilities, and net worth? The balance sheet for a real estate office would show the firm's assets, liabilities, and net worth. The real estate commissioner would not permit which of the following mortgage loan advertisements? First, trust deeds available to qualified borrowers. We loan up to 75% of market value based on our report's income, equity, and credit must be verified. Call our toll-free number 1-888 for a loan. What is call our toll-free number? It is illegal for any advertisement to suggest that a loan can be acquired over the telephone. For example, if a mortgage company ran an advertisement that read "Just call us at 1-888 for a loan," the advertisement would be illegal. 3. Common transfer of property. A quitclaim deed conveys only the interest of the grantor. Correct. Property incorrect. The vendee. The grantee. What is the grantor? Question. Rationale. The grantor and the grantee are the parties to a deed. A quitclaim deed transfers the interest of the grantor only. A grantee does not sign a deed. A vendee is the buyer in a land contract. A buyer contracts to purchase a $75,000 home and puts up an earnest money deposit of $1,500. The commission is 5%, paid by seller. The buyer gets a $260 credit for real property taxes paid in arrears. A buyer obtains an 80% conventional loan at 12% interest with 3 points. What amount should the buyer bring to closing? $19,913. $15,800. $15,040 correct. $16,540. What is $15,040? Question rationale. An 80% loan of $75,000 is a loan for $60,000. 3 points of $60,000, or 3%, equals $1,800. He gets a credit for $260 for taxes and a credit for $1,500 for his earnest money deposit, reducing the amount to bring to closing to $15,040, down payment plus closing costs. The seller, not the buyer, paid the real estate commission. What clause would the lender enforce if the borrower transferred his interest in the property to someone else? Alienation correct. Assumption clause. Subject to clause. Acceleration incorrect. What is alienation? Question rationale. A lender may call the entire note due when there is a transfer by enforcing the alienation clause. Standard title insurance covers unrecorded title defects. Defects disclosed by a competent survey incorrect. Recorded title defects correct. All title defects. What is recorded title defects? Question rationale. Standard title insurance will cover only those defects which could be found by a search of the public records. Guarantee, or extended title insurance would cover non-disclosed defects of record and survey defects. In the closing statement required by RESPA, the sales commission is shown as a debit to the buyer. Credit to the seller incorrect. Credit to the buyer. Debit to the seller correct. What is debit to the seller? Question rationale. The sales commission is paid by the seller at closing and thus reduces his net from the sale of the property, so this is a debit to him. The real property which is subject of a trust deed is considered to be security for the debt incorrect. Evidence of the debt. A mortgage. Collateral correct. What is collateral? Question rationale. A promissory note is evidence of the debt. Is backed up by the collateral which is real property, which can be sold according to the terms of the trust deed which is the security instrument. 3. Prepagent vocabulary. A statement or declaration reduced to writing and sworn to or affirmed before a public official who has authority to administer an oath or affirmation. Affidavit. Contingency. Proclamation. Summation. What is affidavit? An affidavit is a written statement or declaration, sworn to before an officer who has authority to administer an oath. A sudden and substantial tearing away of land by water. Avulsion. Accession. Reliction. Accretion. What is avulsion? In real property law, avulsion refers to a sudden loss or addition to land, which results from the action of nature, usually water. It differs from accretion. The term accretion is used in real estate law to refer to an increase of land due to the accumulation of soil on the shoreline of a lake, stream, or the sea. While accretion is a gift bestowed on landowners by Mother Nature, land could also decrease in size through erosion and avulsion. A legally enforceable right to make use of all or part of another's property, as a result of continuous and uninterrupted use of that property for a period of time as established by statute. Easement. Appurtenant. Easement by prescription. Easement by necessity. Easement in gross. What is easement by prescription? An easement by prescription is the granting of an easement by a court, based on the presumption that a written easement was given, although none existed, after a period of open and continuous use of land. Voluntary relinquishment or surrender of some right or privilege. Waiver. Lack is reversion. Pledge. What is waiver? The relinquishment of a right. In construction, most commonly the waiver by subcontractor of their mechanics lien rights in order for the owner to obtain draws under a construction loan. Where a landowner tries to show that his land should not have to comply with zoning laws for some special reason. Subordination is cheat down. Zoning variance. What is variance? A petition for variance is where a landowner tries to show that his land should not have to comply with zoning laws for some special reason. A variance is done lot by lot. 3. Common practice of real estate and mandated disclosures. A seller completes a property disclosure form and states that there are no conditions in the property that are in need of repair. However, the listing sales agent recognizes the early signs of termite infestation. The sales agent should disclose this condition to the buyer, as this is a latent defect incorrect. Tell the seller to amend the property disclosure statement. Disclose the condition to the buyer, as this is a patent defect correct. Not tell the buyer and rely upon the seller's statements in the property disclosure form. What is disclose the condition to the buyer, as this is a patent defect? Question rationale. The sales agent should disclose this condition to the buyer, as this is a patent defect and would be discovered by a reasonably thorough inspection. A latent defect is a fault in the property that could not have been discovered by a reasonably thorough inspection before the sale. There is no duty to amend a property disclosure form once it has been given, and the agent should not rely upon the seller's representations, or in this case, misrepresentations, as a shield of liability for non-disclosure. When showing a listing, a sales agent is asked about the condition of the basement. Without having seen the basement, the agent states that, to the best of his knowledge, the basement is dry and free of dampness. In fact, the basement leaks steadily whenever there is rain. The agent most likely has committed no error. This is protecting the homeowner's interest. Intentional misrepresentation incorrect. Fraud. Misrepresentation correct. What is misrepresentation? Question rationale. The agent has misrepresented the condition of the property and, therefore, is negligent. Fraud is an intentional misrepresentation. While the sales agent did not intentionally misrepresent the condition of the basement, he should have exercised reasonable care and viewed the basement before making any statements concerning its condition. 3. Pre-patent property ownership. The right to use property by the giving of an easement creates a prescription, a license, an encumbrance, lien. What is an encumbrance? An encumbrance is a right to, interest in, or legal liability on real property that does not prohibit passing title to the property but that may diminish its value. Encumbrances can be classified in several ways. They may be financial, for example, liens, or non-financial, for example, easements, private restrictions. An easement appurtenant is an interest in land and best described as which of the following? The easement appurtenant belongs to the land and follows title. An easement appurtenant provides the legal right to use another's property at any time for whatever reason. An easement appurtenant may be terminated at any time by the servient tenement. An easement appurtenant decreases the value of a property. What is the easement appurtenant belongs to the land and follows title? An appurtenant easement is a type of easement that still applies to a property even if the owners change. It is sometimes referred to as running with the land. In tenancy in common, there is always a unity of interest, possession, time, title. What is possession? Tenancy in common. A tenancy in common is formed as the result of two or more persons owning an undivided interest in the property. Unity of possession is the only unity required for a tenancy in common. No automatic right of survivorship. A tenant in common may bequeath his interest by will. One document, which requires verification and recording for its validity, is a trust deed, mechanics lien, notice of default, transfer, disclosure statement. What is a mechanics lien? A mechanics lien requires verification and recording to be valid. A landlord sold an apartment building so that a freeway can be built. The tenant's lease has expired, but the landlord permits him to stay in the apartment until the building is torn down. The tenant continues to pay the rent as prescribed in the lease. What kind of tenancy does the tenant have? Holdover tenancy, tenancy at will, periodic tenancy, tenancy at sufferance. What is a periodic tenancy? When a tenant stays on after a lease expires and continues to pay rent, and the rent is accepted by the landlord, it is generally assumed that the tenant will continue on the same terms as the lease. Rent is still considered due at the same time as under the lease agreement, but without a formal lease that has an end date, it is now considered a periodic tenancy. Note, This is not the same as a holdover tenancy in which the landlord has requested that the tenant vacate the property. In order to comply with the regulations of the state housing law, a person should seek the issuance of a building permit from the nearest office of the Department of Housing and Community Development, the California Department of Urban Renewal, the local Department of Building and Safety, the California Department of Real Estate. What is the local Department of Building and Safety? The local Department of Building and Safety is responsible for issuing building permits. Who usually sets deed restrictions on a subdivision development? The developer. State and local ordinances. The permanent lender. Federal Housing Administration. What is the developer? The developer sets deed restrictions on a subdivision development. The goal of these restrictions, in theory, is to provide the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the community, and restrictions often exist to help the developer meet their responsibilities. The developer's responsibilities include making sure the streets, curbs, sidewalks, utilities, and gutters are completed and functional. A non-possessory interest in real property is also called an encumbrance, a servient tenement, an estate for years, a leasehold estate. What is an encumbrance? A non-possessory interest in land is a term of the law of property to describe any of a category of rights held by one person to use land that is in the possession of another. Such rights can generally be created in one of two ways, either by an express agreement between the party who owns the land and the party who seeks to own the interest, or by an order of a court. A claim against, limitation on, or a liability against real estate is an encumbrance. Encumbrances include liens, deed restrictions, easements, encroachments, and licenses. An encumbrance can restrict the owner's ability to transfer title to the property or lessen its value. 3. Pre-pagent valuation and market analysis. An appraiser has been hired to prepare an appraisal report of a property for loan purposes. The property is an elegant old mansion that is now leased out as a restaurant. To which approach to value should the appraiser probably give the greatest weight when making this appraisal? Sales comparison. Income. Reproduction cost. Replacement cost. What is income? The income approach is one of three major groups of methodologies, called valuation approaches, used by appraisers. It is particularly common in commercial real estate appraisal and in business appraisal. The fundamental math is similar to the methods used for financial valuation, securities analysis, or bond pricing. Which of the following approaches to value estimate tends to set the upper limits of value? Income. Replacement. Market comparison. Comparable sales. What is replacement cost? Replacement approach sets the upper limits of value. Cost replacement approach is the process of estimating the value of a property by adding to the estimated land value the appraiser's estimate of the replacement cost of the building, less depreciation. When an appraiser uses the phrase effective age, he is referring to the number of years since the improvements were made, the number of years during which the property will yield a worthwhile return on the investment made, the age of the property based upon its condition, the estimated total life of an improvement. What is the age of the property based upon its condition? Effective age is a combination of many factors, including location, quality of construction and maintenance, architectural style, actual age, climate, and so forth. A well-built building in a desirable location will have a much longer effective life than a cheaply constructed space in a poorly maintained office park setting. Land value is estimated on the basis of unit in place method. Square footage cost approach. Selling price of comparables. What is selling price of comparables? Land value is generally determined using the market data approach, which bases the value on the selling price of comparables. In the event that you can't find comparables for your property, work backward from the value of what you can build on the land, highest and best use, and what the property would be worth with the highest and best improvement. You can then subtract the cost of building the improvement to determine the land value. When evaluating the data in a neighborhood market survey, a residential property manager will be most concerned with trends in population composition, opportunity for expansion, traffic counts, special utility services. What is trends in population composition? Property management is the operation, control, and oversight of real estate. Management indicates a need to be cared for, monitored, and accountability given for its useful life and condition. This is much akin to the role of management in any business. The neighborhood market survey is more about population than the other options. 3. Gram financing. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer are approved for a $72,000 loan. Their monthly payments will be $9.35 per thousand for 30 years. How much interest will they pay over the life of the loan? $673,200. $170,352 correct. $242,352 incorrect. $601,200. What is $170,352? Question rationale. 72,000 divide 1,000 equals 72. 72 times 9.35 equals 673.20. 673.20 times 360 months, 30 octoseconds, equals 242,352 pi. 242,352 minus 72,000 loan equals $170,352 interest. The note that calls for periodic payments on the principal, not including interest, and calls for a balloon payment at the end is called A/N. Adjustable rate note. Fully amortized installment note. Straight note incorrect. Partially amortized installment note correct. What is partially amortized installment note? Question rationale. Partially amortized notes call for periodic payments of principal only. The interest is due at the end of the term. When a trust deed debtor is in default on a loan, the loan may be reinstated if all delinquencies and fees are paid prior to how many days before a trustee sale? 5 days correct. 7 days. 10 days. 3 days incorrect. What is 3 days? A borrower has 5 days. Question rationale. A borrower has until 5 days before a trustee sale to pay all delinquent amounts and fees. 3 prepaid contracts. Susan is shown a home by her agent, Selwyn. She makes an offer and gives Selwyn a check. At what point does her offer become an enforceable contract to buy? When Susan is notified the seller accepts the offer. When the deposit check clears. As soon as Selwyn receives her offer and her check. As soon as the seller receives the offer and the check. What is when Susan is notified the seller accepts the offer? Offers are serious business. Once accepted, they cannot be withdrawn without penalty, such as loss of the deposit. A broker and seller terminate the listing contract. An offer is received in the mail by the broker after the termination of the listing contract. The offer is for full price and includes all of the terms and conditions of the seller. Why is this not a valid contract? There is no consideration involved. There is no current listing agreement. No earnest money has been enclosed. No acceptance has been given. What is no acceptance has been given? The offer has not been presented to, or accepted by, the owner, so it cannot be a valid contract. However, even though the listing agreement has expired, the offer should be presented. If it's accepted and the transaction closes, the broker will generally be entitled to his or her full commission. Which of the following is an acceptable termination date for an enforceable exclusive listing of residential real property? 90 days after listing agreement is signed. 90 days from the completion of construction whenever the loan is funded. 3 days after notice of rescission of the seller. What is 90 days after the listing agreement is signed? In an exclusive listing only one agent can be hired. It requires a specific termination date, not 90 days from the completion of construction, rather 90 days from signing. If 2 exclusive listings are signed, the seller may be liable for 2 commissions. When a buyer withdraws his offer to purchase real property prior to acceptance by the seller, the seller may sue the buyer for specific performance and will probably win the suit. Buyer is entitled to the refund of the earnest money deposit. Broker may sue buyer for specific performance. Seller is entitled to 1/2 of the earnest money deposit. What is buyer is entitled to the refund of the earnest money deposit? There must be some type of offer and acceptance by the parties for the contract to be binding. If a buyer withdraws their offer before it is accepted by the seller, The buyer gets their earnest money back. In which of the following contracts does one of the parties agree not to revoke an offer for a certain period of time? Estate for years. An option. A listing contract. A ratification. What is an option? An option is a contract to keep an offer to sell or lease real property open for a set period of time. The optioner cannot revoke the offer to sell during the designated period of time. An option is under no obligation to buy the property in question. The option is not bound by the option. Carol signs a listing agreement. What is included under the section terms of the sale on Carol's agreement? Price, compensation to broker, and deposit loan amount, personal property, and compensation to broker price, method of payment, and personal property terms of sale, personal property, and additional terms. What is price, method of payment, and personal property? The terms of the sale section in a listing agreement lists the price and how the price is to be paid. It also discusses any personal property which is included in the price. Assume a broker took an open listing and made an oral agreement with another broker to share the commission on a property. The second broker procured an offer resulting in the sale of the property. If the first broker refused to share his commission on the sale, which of these statements is most accurate? He need not share the commission. As it was an open listing, the second broker would stand a good chance of winning a court suit for his share of the commission. The second broker should appeal to the Department of Real Estate. He need not share the commission due to the statute of frauds. What is the second broker would stand a good chance of winning a court suit for his share of the commission? If a broker took a listing and made an oral agreement with a second broker to share the commission, then refused to share the commission when the second broker procured an offer resulting in a sale, there is a good chance that the second broker could win a lawsuit for his share of the commission. Note, this question is about the oral contract between the two brokers, not the listing agreement. 3. Transfer of property. Actual notice refers to something you actually have seen or know to be true. Correct. The reasons why you should record a deed. Documents that are recorded at the courthouse regarding a person's property. Incorrect. The information you are presumed to know. It is something you actually have seen or know to be true. Question. Rationale. Actual notice refers to things you actually have seen or have actual knowledge of, as opposed to what you are presumed to know or could know by checking public records. Constructive notice. Standard title insurance covers unrecorded title defects, all title defects,